next presenter is Caden Kesey. He comes to us from, again, South Salem High School in Salem, Oregon, so right in our backyard here at Willamette. He is a senior in computer science, so his presentation is under the auspices of our that capstone course that I mentioned before, and is entitled Algorithmic Music Using Rules and Random Numbers to Compose Songs. And so I will turn it over to Caden and mute myself. You can go ahead, Caden.
Okay, so can you see everything well? So I was working with algorithmic music, so the goal of this project was to be able to create a song that sounded like a rock song, you know, with a program with algorithms and certain limitations. And in order to do this, I used the visual programming language Max, which has a lot of functions for working with audio. And using C, I was able to write my own object to use in Max. So, I guess, I don't know if this is probably kind of hard to see, but right here is a little object which I called the music box, and so the user has certain inputs that they give to the music box, and then that is what I wrote in C, and that's where all the actual algorithms are going on. And then what this outputs is just integers and floats, so just raw numbers. And then using Max, I'm able to turn that into actual MIDI signals, which then I can run into virtual instruments and then play back the audio. And the reason why I chose to use Max is because it made doing all of this UI very simple. Because it is a visual programming language, all of that was able to come together fairly easily. And it also allowed me to, it could take care of the things such as putting together the actual MIDI signal. And MIDI is a format used to convey musical information. And so you, for instance, like a note, instead of having like middle C, for instance, it just has a numerical value instead of you know, having to use letters. And so that way it you can also, you know, give it the length of your note, and so how long you're going to play the note, when the note's supposed to stop. And so it makes it really easy to transmit that information. And it made it easy for me to just output numbers and not have to worry about all that formatting. And so then Max was able to take care of that for me. So, and then the virtual instruments I used also sample real instruments. So that way it sounds as close as possible to a rock song when it plays in the end, which was the goal. So I have 6 different instruments going on, or actually I have 7. So I have an electric guitar sound, which is the main melody. Then I have a bass guitar, drums, which include a kick, snare, hi-hat, and then also ghost notes for the snare. Just add a little bit more complexity to it. And then I have a piano, which is able to play 4-note chords. So before I go into detail about the actual algorithms, I want to play back some of what the program generated. So hopefully you guys can hear this. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what it sounds like, then I can go into a bit more detail of how I got to that. So in C is where I was able to program. I ended up actually using linked lists to store the notes, and so you can actually see right here I have just a struct to hold the value of the note and how long it's going to be in the pointer to the next note. And so everything is pretty much based around the drums. So the drums only have like, well, there's only 3 different snare patterns that it can possibly use, and that limits it so that you're not just like when you're listening to pop and rock music. There's really only so many places where the backbeat is going to land, and so that makes sure that the song sounds somewhat coherent. And so then the kick also has a few different patterns, and those are fairly limited in what and how they can vary. But the bass and melody are where more of the random elements come in. So after one of the snare variations is paired up with one of the kick variations, then the kick is it's used as the basis for the bass guitar. The bass guitar is going to play the root note of whatever chord it's on whenever the kick plays, and then in between the kick hits, it will play other notes in the chord higher up as kind of like decoration or just little like flourishes or whatever. And so that way they feel in sync to each other. So I just have text files that have lists of chord progressions, which the program reads in and randomly chooses one for, I don't know if you could tell during the songs, but I split them into kind of 2 different sections. So you have something that kind of sounds like a verse, and then something that kind of sounds like a chorus. And so it loads in a chord progression and sets that as the verse chord progression, and then it sets in a chord progression for the chorus chord progression, and then the kick and the snare stay whatever pattern they have stay consistent throughout the entire song. But then the bass is going to follow those two different chord progressions. And the melody, similar to how the bass follows the kick, the melody is going to somewhat follow the snare. So every time the snare hits, the melody will move up an octave. And so all of the songs are set to be in A minor. And eventually I wanted to be able to add the ability to change keys for the user as another input, but time constraints didn't allow me to do that. So all the songs are just in A minor. And with that in mind, then I was able to make it so that the melody only is given the notes of the A minor scale, and then we'll randomly pick lengths and notes from that scale in order to play back. But every time it reaches a snare hit, it'll move up an octave in order to kind of feel like it's in sync with the rest of the song. And so with those two aspects, the whole song is able to feel like the different parts are playing off of each other. So there's certain limitations in place, as well as a large degree of randomness in order to create those songs. But I definitely did cherry pick those examples because a lot of what it does produce doesn't necessarily sound that great or particularly interesting. So I really had to go through a lot of different seeds to find something that I thought was good. And so the user is able to start and play the song, input a seed for the random number generator. That way, I could get the same song to output, and then you're also able to change the tempo. And so that's able to vary up the songs quite a bit. Yeah. And so I think that's about it. I think I would have liked to add a little bit of more variety, length, and complexity to the songs, but I think I was fairly happy with what I was able to output in the end. But I think there's a lot that could be added to it. So thank you.